Love ends the moment you understand it was already gone. I was folding laundry when his wallet fell, a Thursday, late October. The coat had been draped over the kitchen chair for 3 days, brown canvas, worn at the elbows, smelling faintly of coffee and something else I couldn't name. I'd asked him twice to hang it up. The wallet hit the tile with a sound like a door closing, and when I bent to retrieve it, a white keycard slid free. Room 447, the Marriott Courtyard, Portland, Oregon. We had never been to Portland. I stood there holding it between my thumb and forefinger. The way you hold evidence you don't want your fingerprints on. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere upstairs, our daughter was singing to herself. Badly. Off-key. The way 9-year-olds do when they think no one is listening. The keycard was blank except for the room number and the magnetic strip, worn at the edges as though it had been slipped in and out of pockets many times. I turned it over. Nothing. Just white plastic and a truth I wasn't ready to name. I put it back in his wallet, closed the leather fold, set the whole thing on the counter next to the fruit bowl. This isn't fiction. This is how love disappears, one small truth at a time. We had been married for 12 years. Good years, I told myself. The kind measured in routines rather than passion. He left for work at 7:15 each morning, kissed my forehead in the same spot, just above my left eyebrow. I made coffee in the French press he'd bought me for our anniversary. The 5th one, I think, or maybe the 6th. Our daughter had his eyes and my stubbornness. We had a mortgage, a vegetable garden that never quite flourished, and a shared hatred of the neighbors' wind chimes. Sunday mornings he made pancakes. Wednesday nights we ordered Thai food and watched whatever documentary he'd queued up, something about deep-sea creatures or the fall of empires. I complained about the subtitles. He fell asleep 20 minutes in, his head tilted back against the couch, mouth slightly open. I would watch the rest alone, the blue light flickering across his sleeping face, and feel something I mistook for contentment. He traveled for work. Regional sales manager for a medical supply company, stents, surgical tools, equipment I couldn't picture, but pretended to understand when he talked about quarterly projections. He'd come home tired, his shoulders curved forward, and set his briefcase by the door with a heaviness that suggested the weight of it followed him everywhere. Twice a month, sometimes 3 times. Dallas, Seattle, Chicago. Cities that sounded like business, like spreadsheets and hotel conference rooms and complimentary breakfast buffets. He never mentioned Portland. I knew his patterns. The way he organized his suitcase, rolled his dress shirts to prevent wrinkles. The way he texted me from the gate, boarding now, love you. The same 2 sentences every time, punctuation included. The way he came home and unpacked immediately, methodical, putting everything back in its place as though the trip had never happened. He hated living out of a suitcase, he'd said once. Hated the disruption. I believed him. That Thursday night, he came home at 6:30. I heard his key in the lock, the familiar scrape of the deadbolt, the soft thud of his briefcase hitting the floor. Our daughter ran to him and he lifted her, spun her once, set her down gently. She was getting too big for that. Soon she'd be too heavy, and that ritual would end without ceremony, the way so many things do. "How was your day?" I asked. "Long," he said. He was loosening his tie, the navy one with the thin gray stripe. "Yours?" "Fine." We moved through the kitchen like dancers who'd practiced the same choreography for years. He poured himself water. I stirred the pasta. Our daughter set the table, folding napkins the way I'd taught her, into imperfect triangles. We sat, we ate, we talked about her school project, about the broken gutter that needed fixing, about whether we should repaint the dining room. Normal things, comfortable things. I didn't ask about Portland. His wallet sat on the counter where I'd left it, next to the fruit bowl with its 2 aging bananas and 3 apples we'd probably never eat. He didn't pick it up, didn't check for it. Maybe he assumed it was still in his coat. Maybe he'd forgotten it was there at all. After dinner, he went upstairs to shower. I heard the water running, the old pipes knocking the way they always did. I stood at the sink, washing dishes, watching steam rise from the hot water and fog the window above the faucet. The keycard was still in his wallet. I knew this without looking. I could feel its presence the way you feel a storm coming, a pressure in the air that changes everything without making a sound. I dried my hands, walked to the counter, opened his wallet again. There it was, room 447. I didn't know then that this would be the last night I slept well. I became a detective of my own life. Not immediately. First, I tried to forget. I told myself it meant nothing. Hotel key cards to stick to things. Maybe a colleague handed it to him by mistake. Maybe it fell into his bag at a conference, slipped between folders and pens and business cards from people whose names he'd never remember. Maybe it wasn't even his city. Maybe. But I knew. The way you know a storm is coming before the sky darkens. The way you know someone is lying before they finish the sentence. I started noticing things. The way he tilted his phone away from me when he checked his messages. Not dramatically, just a slight angle, a shift in his wrist as though the light was hitting the screen wrong. The way he'd started closing the bathroom door when he brushed his teeth, when before it had always been open, the two of us moving around each other in the small space, familiar and easy. There were receipts. I found them in his coat pockets when I finally convinced him to hang it up. Dinner for two at a restaurant I didn't recognize. A wine bar. A florist. When I asked about the flowers, casual, offhand, "Did you bring flowers to the office?" He paused for just a second too long. "Client meeting," he said. "Gift basket situation." Gift basket situation. The phrase felt rehearsed. I started checking his credit card statements online. He didn't know I had the password. He'd given it to me years ago, back when we still believed in radical transparency, back when hiding felt like something other couples did. There were charges from Portland. 3 different trips. The Marriott Courtyard, yes, but also restaurants, a bookstore, a parking garage. The dates didn't match any business trips he'd mentioned. I took screenshots. I don't know why. Evidence, maybe. Or proof that I wasn't imagining it, that the ground really was shifting beneath me. One night, I asked him about work. "How's the Portland territory?" I said. We were in bed, both reading, the lamp casting yellow light across his face. He looked up from his book, something about World War II, all maps and strategy. "Portland? I thought you'd been working on expanding there." "Oh." He turned a page he hadn't read. "Yeah, it's fine. Slow going." "You've been there a few times, right?" "Once or twice. Why?" "Just curious." He went back to his book, but his jaw tightened, a small thing, barely visible. I watched the muscle work beneath the skin. The keycard became my talisman. I kept checking to see if it was still there, slipping his wallet open when he was in the shower, when he was mowing the lawn, when he was reading to our daughter before bed. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought it would disappear on its own, that I'd imagined it. Maybe I wanted it to vanish so I could pretend I'd never seen it at all. But it stayed. Room 447. The numbers burned into my vision like something I'd stared at too long in bright light. I started lying too, small lies at first. "I'm running to the store." But I'd drive to the coffee shop and sit in the parking lot, scrolling through his social media, his email. I'd guessed his password on the 3rd try. Our daughter's name plus his birth year. Unimaginative and heartbreaking. There were messages, but none that proved anything. Careful messages, professional ones, and then, buried in a folder marked Archive, emails to someone named Claire. Short exchanges. "Thinking about you. Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again." The dates aligned with his Portland trips. I sat in the car and read them all, one after another, my hands shaking so badly I had to set the phone down. When I looked up, I realized I'd been parked for 40 minutes. The coffee shop had closed. The parking lot was empty except for my car and one lonely shopping cart someone had abandoned near the entrance. I drove home. Walked inside. He was on the couch, watching television, our daughter asleep against his shoulder. He looked up and smiled. A real smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Hey," he said. "You were gone a while." "Line was long," I said. He nodded, turned back to the TV. I stood in the doorway and watched them, my husband and my daughter framed by lamplight, peaceful and whole. And I understood in that moment that I was the only one who knew we were broken. The confrontation came on a Sunday, not planned, not rehearsed. It simply arrived, the way weather changes, suddenly and without permission. We were in the kitchen. Our daughter was at a friend's house. He was loading the dishwasher, and I was wiping down the counters, and the silence between us felt heavier than usual, dense with all the words neither of us was saying. I picked up his wallet. It had been sitting on the counter again, next to the fruit bowl. Habit, maybe, or fate. "You left this out," I said. Thanks. He reached for it. I didn't let go. There's a keycard in here, I said. His hand stopped, not dramatically. Just a pause. A beat too long. What? Room 447, the Marriott in Portland. The dishwasher hummed. Water ran somewhere in the pipes. He looked at me, and I watched his face rearrange itself, searching for the right expression. Confusion first, then concern, then something that might have been anger or might have been fear. I can explain. Don't. He closed his mouth. I set the wallet on the counter between us. How long? It's not what you think. How long? He looked down, studied his hands, the wedding ring he'd worn for 12 years, the small scar on his thumb from when he'd tried to fix the lawnmower himself. 8 months. 8 months. The number sat between us like a third person, like someone I'd invited into our house without realizing they'd been living there all along. Her name is Claire, I said. Not a question. He nodded. Do you love her? I don't know. His voice cracked. I didn't mean for this to happen. But it did. Yes. I waited for anger, for tears, for the hot rush of betrayal they write about in novels. But what came instead was numbness, a cold that started in my chest and spread outward, turning my fingertips to ice. I felt detached, as though I was watching the scene from somewhere else, from above, like I was both here and not here at all. Does she know about us? I asked. About Emma? Yes. And she's okay with it? With being the other woman? He flinched. It's not like that. Then what is it like? He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I was lonely. 3 words, simple and devastating. You were lonely, I repeated. Here, with us. You were lonely. It wasn't about you. Don't say that. My voice stayed level, calm, even as something inside me splintered. Don't insult me by saying it wasn't about me. You chose someone else. You chose her. Every time you said you were working late, every time you kissed me goodbye, every time you read to Emma before bed, you were choosing her. Was crying now, quiet tears that ran down his face without sound. I'm sorry. I know. And I did know. I could see it in every line of his body, the way his shoulders curved inward, the way his hands shook. He was sorry. But sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't erase 8 months of lies. Sorry doesn't make me forget that the man I'd built a life with had been living a second life I knew nothing about. I picked up his wallet, took out the keycard, set it on the counter. I'm going to pick up Emma, I said. When I get back, I want you to be gone. Not forever, just gone. For tonight. Figure out where you're staying. Figure out what you want. Figure out if you want us at all. I left him standing there in the kitchen, tears drying on his face, and drove to get our daughter. My hands didn't shake. My breath stayed even. I felt nothing and everything, all at once. A strange, empty fullness that I'd later recognize as shock. Emma was in the car seat, chattering about her friend's new kitten, when I realized I was still wearing my wedding ring. I looked down at it, white gold, simple band, engraved with our wedding date, and kept driving. He stayed with his brother for 2 weeks. During that time, the house changed. Not visibly, nothing moved, but it felt larger, somehow, like a shell with something missing from inside. I walked through rooms that echoed differently, the couch where he'd fallen asleep during documentaries, the coffee maker I'd stopped using because it made too much for one person, the bathroom where his razor no longer sat by the sink. Emma asked where Daddy was. Working, I said. He'll be back soon. She accepted this. Children are resilient that way, believing what they're told until they have reason not to. I told my sister, not everything, just enough. He had an affair. She came over with wine and Chinese food and sat with me on the couch while I cried. Not dramatic sobs, just tears that leaked out without permission, without sound. She didn't offer advice, didn't tell me what to do, just sat there, her hand on my knee, while I unraveled. Did you know? I asked. Did you suspect? No, she said. Neither did you. That's what makes it worse. I called a lawyer. Just for a consultation, I told myself, just to understand my options. She was kind, professional, and utterly pragmatic. She explained custody, asset division, the timeline of dissolution. She used words like irreconcilable differences and mediation, words that made our marriage sound like a business arrangement that had failed to meet its projections. I didn't hire her, not yet. He came back after 2 weeks. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd eaten 1,000 meals, where Emma had practiced her spelling words, where we'd done our taxes and planned our vacations and pretended we were fine. I ended it, he said. With Claire. It's over. Okay. I want to fix this. I want to fix us. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing my husband's face. Same dark hair, same crooked bottom tooth, same scar on his thumb. But different. Changed. Or maybe just revealed. I don't know if we can be fixed, I said. We can try. Can we? He reached across the table. I let him take my hand. His palm was warm, familiar, and I felt nothing. No spark, no anger, no love. Just the physical fact of his skin against mine. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, he said. Therapy, counseling, whatever you need. What I needed was for you not to do this. He flinched. I know, and I can't take it back, but I can try to make it right. How? I don't know, but I have to try. We started therapy the following week. Couples counseling with a woman named Dr. Morrison, who had an office that smelled like lavender and old books. We sat on opposite ends of a gray couch and talked about our feelings, our needs, the breakdown of communication. He cried, I didn't. I'd run out of tears by then, or maybe they'd just frozen somewhere inside me, waiting for permission to thaw. The sessions were excruciating, not because of what was said, but because of what couldn't be said. How do you explain that trust, once broken, becomes a language you no longer speak? How do you articulate the feeling that the person you loved most in the world is now the person you trust least? Dr. Morrison asked what I needed from him. Honesty, I said. You have it, he said. Do I? He looked wounded. Yes, but I wondered. Would I spend the rest of our marriage checking his phone, monitoring his credit cards, looking for key cards and wallets? Would I ever stop being a detective in my own home? Months passed. Then a year, we stayed together. Not because we were happy, but because leaving felt harder than staying. Because Emma deserved 2 parents in the same house. Because the logistics of separation, selling the house, dividing belongings, explaining to friends and family seemed insurmountable. Because I wasn't ready to admit that 12 years could end over a white key card with a room number I'd memorized, despite never wanting to. He was trying, I could see that. He came home earlier, stopped traveling as much, requested local assignments. He texted me throughout the day. Thinking of you, miss you, love you. Messages that felt both genuine and performative, like he was trying to prove something to both of us. We had sex again, eventually. It felt mechanical, a thing we did because married people are supposed to. Afterward, I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if he was comparing me to her, if I was better or worse. If I'd ever stopped being the woman he chose and became, instead, the woman he was stuck with. I never asked about Claire, where she lived, what she looked like, if he still thought about her. I didn't want to know. Knowing would make her real, give her shape and substance. And I preferred her as an abstraction, a shadow I didn't have to acknowledge. But sometimes, late at night, I'd imagine her. Dark hair or blonde, tall or petite. Did she laugh at his jokes? Did he tell her things he never told me? Did she know about the scar on his thumb, the way he couldn't sleep without a fan running, the fact that he cried during Pixar movies but pretended he didn't? I started sleeping in the guest room. Just for a night, I told him. Then 2 nights, then a week. He didn't protest. Maybe he understood. Maybe he was relieved. Emma noticed. Why doesn't Daddy sleep in your room anymore? Sometimes grown-ups need their own space, I said. Are you getting divorced? No, sweetheart. We're just figuring things out. She hugged me, her small arms tight around my waist. I love you, Mommy. I love you too. And I did, fiercely, protectively, in a way that made the rest of it almost bearable. The reckoning came quietly, without announcement. I was folding laundry, again, always, when I found myself holding one of his shirts, the blue one he'd worn to our last anniversary dinner. We'd gone to an Italian restaurant, shared a bottle of wine, talked about remodeling the kitchen. It had been 3 months after I'd found the keycard. He'd been trying, I'd been trying. We were both exhausted from the effort. I held the shirt and realized I couldn't remember the last time he'd looked at me the way he used to. Not with passion. I'd long ago accepted that passion fades, gets replaced by something steadier, but with recognition, with knowing. These days, he looked at me like a problem he was trying to solve, like a project with a deadline, like someone he was obligated to love rather than someone he chose to love. And I looked at him the same way. I thought about the day we'd met, a friend's wedding, both of us at the bar, avoiding the bouquet toss and the electric slide. He'd made some joke about the chicken being dry. I'd laughed. We'd talked for 3 hours, forgetting to dance, forgetting to socialize, just talking. Easy and light and full of possibility. When had we stopped talking? When had our conversations become logistics and scheduling, reminders about parent-teacher conferences and dentist appointments and whose turn it was to take out the trash? Maybe the affair wasn't the ending. Maybe it was just the moment I finally noticed we'd been ending for years. I set down the shirt, left the laundry unfolded, walked downstairs to where he sat in the living room, laptop open, pretending to work. "I want a divorce," I said. He looked up. "What?" "I want a divorce." Not angry, not sad, just certain. He closed the laptop. "I thought we were working on things." "We were, but I can't do this anymore." "Can't do what?" "Pretend. Pretend I trust you. Pretend I've forgiven you. Pretend that staying together is what's best for anyone." "It's what's best for Emma." "Is it?" I sat down across from him. "Is it best for her to grow up watching two people who can barely look at each other? Who sleep in separate rooms and speak in polite, careful sentences like strangers at a dinner party?" He was quiet. "I don't hate you," I said. "That's the strange part. I thought I would. Thought I'd burn with it, this righteous anger that would sustain me. But I don't hate you. I just don't know you anymore. Or maybe I never did." "That's not true." "Isn't it? You spent 8 months living a life I knew nothing about, 8 months of lies. And you did it so easily, so naturally, like it was nothing." "It wasn't nothing. It was a mistake. I know, you've said that. But here's the thing about mistakes. They reveal something true. You made a choice. Every time you texted her, every time you booked that hotel room, every time you came home and kissed my forehead and asked about my day, you chose her. You chose the lie. And now I'm choosing myself." He started crying again. I'd seen him cry more in the past year than in the previous 12 combined. "Please," he said. "We can still fix this." "No, we can't. And I don't want to anymore." I stood, walked to the kitchen, poured myself water from the tap, and stood at the sink, looking out at the backyard. The vegetable garden had died. I hadn't replanted it this year. The lawn needed mowing, the fence needed painting. Everything was slowly returning to wildness, and I found I didn't care. He didn't follow me, didn't argue. Maybe he was tired too. Maybe he'd been waiting for me to be brave enough to say it first. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The divorce took 8 months, the same amount of time as the affair, though neither of us mentioned the symmetry. We were civil, divided things fairly, agreed on joint custody without fighting. Emma cried when we told her, but adapted quickly the way children do, creating routines that included 2 homes, 2 bedrooms, 2 lives that ran parallel but separate. I kept the house. He moved to an apartment downtown, modern and sparse, the kind of place that looked like a hotel room. I wondered if that's what he wanted, or if he'd just stopped caring about permanence. We saw each other at drop-offs, at school events, at Emma's dance recitals and soccer games. We were polite, asked about each other's weeks, commented on the weather. We'd become the very thing we'd fought against in therapy, strangers who share a history. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me with something like regret. Not for what he'd done, but for what he'd lost. And I'd feel nothing. Not pity, not satisfaction. Just the absence of feeling, clean and clear as water. I dated eventually. A man from work who took me to dinner and made me laugh and didn't ask about my past. It didn't last. I wasn't ready. Might never be ready. But it felt good to remember I was capable of sitting across from someone and feeling a small spark of interest, of possibility. My sister asked if I was happy. No, I said, but I'm free. Is that better? I think so. I'd taken the key card from his wallet that day in the kitchen, room 447. I'd kept it, though I didn't know why. Some nights I'd take it out, turn it over in my hands, and try to remember the person I'd been when I first found it. How naive, how hopeful, how certain that love meant forever. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, I threw it away. Just dropped it in the kitchen trash, buried beneath coffee grounds and banana peels and all the other ordinary debris of living. Emma asked me once if I still loved Daddy. Yes, I said, because it was true. Love doesn't vanish just because trust does. It changes shape, becomes something quieter, more complicated. I loved who he'd been, who we'd been together, but I loved myself more, and that felt like the most important truth I'd learned. Years can pass inside a single evening, but healing happens in increments too small to measure. I repainted the dining room, planted a new garden, flowers this time instead of vegetables, because I wanted beauty without utility. I started sleeping in the master bedroom again, reclaiming space I'd abandoned. I bought new sheets, a new comforter, rearranged the furniture until the room felt like mine, and only mine. Emma is 14 now. She has her father's eyes and my stubbornness and a wisdom that sometimes frightens me. She splits her time between us, adapts easily, has learned to hold two versions of family in her mind at once. Sometimes I see her looking at me with something like understanding, as though she knows more than I've told her, as though she's forgiven me for the fracture, even though it wasn't my fault to begin with. I saw him recently at her 8th grade graduation. He was there with someone, a woman I didn't recognize, younger, blonde, smiling too brightly. Not Claire, someone new, or maybe not new at all. I didn't ask. We sat on opposite sides of the auditorium. When Emma's name was called, we both stood and applauded, proud parents of a daughter who'd survived our ending and emerged whole. Afterward, in the parking lot, we exchanged the usual pleasantries. She looks happy, he said. She is. You look good. Thanks. So do you. And he did. He looked lighter, somehow, unburdened by the weight of his own lies. I wondered if he thought about Portland, about room 447, about the moment everything changed because a wallet fell and a truth was finally seen. I wondered if he regretted it. Not the affair, but the way it ended. The loss of routine, of family dinners, of coming home to people who knew him. I wondered if he was happy in his new life, with his new person, or if he'd simply carried his loneliness from one relationship to another, unpacking it like luggage he could never leave behind. I didn't ask. His life was no longer my concern, and mine was no longer his. I drove home alone, windows down, spring air warm against my face. The house was quiet when I arrived. Emma was spending the night with her father, a routine we'd established years ago. I made dinner for one, pasta, simple, the way I liked it, and ate at the kitchen counter, the same counter where his wallet had once sat next to a fruit bowl I no longer kept. I thought about that Thursday in October, the sound of the wallet hitting tile, the white key card, room 447, the moment before I understood, when I still believed in the story we'd been telling ourselves, when love felt permanent and betrayal felt impossible. I thought about all the versions of myself I'd been, the wife who folded his laundry, the detective who searched for proof, the woman who'd stood in the kitchen and said no more, the mother who'd rebuilt a life from ruins, the person I was now, alone and somehow whole. And I realized I don't miss him. Not the way I thought I would. Not the him who lied or the him who chose someone else. But sometimes late at night, I miss the him I thought he was. I miss the marriage I thought we had. I miss the safety of believing that love was enough, that trust was given and kept, that promises meant something more than breath and sound. But missing an illusion is not the same as wanting it back. I washed my single dish, dried it, put it away, turned off the kitchen light and climbed the stairs to my bedroom, my room, my space, my quiet refuge. Before sleep came, I thought about Emma, about the woman she was becoming, about the lessons she'd learned from watching us end. I hoped she'd learn that staying isn't always strength, that leaving isn't always failure, that love is necessary but not sufficient, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop pretending. I hoped she'd learn that healing doesn't mean forgetting, that trust, once broken, doesn't restore to its original shape, that you can forgive someone and still choose not to stay. That peace sometimes looks like an empty house, a single plate, a life rebuilt without apology. The truth is this: betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It rewrites your history, turns every good memory suspect, makes you question whether anything was real. For a long time, I couldn't look at our wedding photos without seeing lies beneath the smiles. Couldn't remember Sunday morning pancakes without wondering if he was already thinking of her, already building his escape. But time softens even that. Not forgiveness. I'm not sure I've forgiven him, not fully, maybe never, but something gentler: acceptance. The understanding that people are complex and flawed, that love is real even when it fails, that we were both doing the best we could with the tools we had, and it simply wasn't enough. He was lonely. He made a choice. I made a different one. And now we're here, two people who built a life together and took it apart, piece by piece, trying not to destroy our daughter in the rubble. Some nights, I still dream about finding that key card. In the dreams, I'm standing in the kitchen, and the wallet falls, and the key card slides free, and I bend down to pick it up. But instead of room 447, it's blank. Clean white plastic with nothing written on it. No proof, no evidence, no truth. And I wake up not knowing if that would have been better or worse. I've learned to live with not knowing. Love ended the moment I understood it was already gone. But life didn't. Life continued, stubborn and insistent, full of small beauties I might have missed if I'd been too busy pretending. The first tomato I grew in my flower garden, planted by accident when a seed from last year's garden survived the winter. The sound of Emma laughing on the phone with friends, that particular teenage joy that needs no audience. The morning I woke up and realized I'd slept through the night without dreaming of him at all. These are the things that save us. Not grand gestures or dramatic moments, but the quiet accumulation of days that prove we can survive what we thought would kill us. I'm not happy. Not in the way I once imagined happiness, as a destination, a state of being that, once achieved, lasts forever. But I'm something better. I'm free from pretending, free from checking credit card statements and searching coat pockets and lying awake wondering where he really is. Free from the exhausting performance of being a wife to someone who'd already left. And sometimes late at night, in this quiet house that belongs only to me, I feel something close to peace. Not the peace of resolution, but the peace of acceptance. The peace that comes from knowing I survived, that I chose myself when choosing myself felt impossible, that I learned to be alone without being lonely. The wallet fell. The truth emerged. The life I thought I had ended, but I didn't.